Well, Phil, beef prices and other staple food ingredients in Indonesia have hit record prices as the government pushes for self-sufficiency by 2014. But that plan is taking its toll on the country's meat industry. As Andy Saputra reports, the policy is in danger of backfiring.
28-year-old Aben has been making his living by selling one of Indonesia's most popular dishes, a tasty meatball soup known locally as bakso. But after 10 years of plying his family trade, he is worried that he will no longer afford to keep ladling brothy goodness to his customers. The price of beef, the main ingredient for bakso, has skyrocketed to record high, threatening livelihoods of sellers like Aben.
I was really shocked. I am forced to raise the prices on my soup. Hopefully my customers will understand.
Beef now costs more than $10 a kilogram, almost double the prices of last year. Comparatively, beef prices around the region typically goes for $5 per kilogram. The high cost of beef is an inevitable side effect of Indonesia's drive to achieve self-sufficiency in meat as well as other staple food, a policy stemmed from the global food crisis in 2007. Last year, Indonesia slashed live cattle imports by a third and boxed beef by 2/3. With domestic productions can't keep up with the demand, prices here soar. The policy and soaring prices have created heated debate here and beyond, with the United States filing a complaint to the WTO, accusing Indonesia of protectionism after the limiting of U.S. beef imports. With its archipelago geography, unreliable transport, and lack of industrial farming, the Paris-based Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has also called Indonesia's self-sufficiency goal misplaced, a sentiment that is shared by the Association of Beef Importers here. But the government is pushing on. With further reductions of imports are planned this year, Aben and the meat sellers here are in danger to be left behind. Andy Saputra, CCTV, Jakarta, Indonesia.
Towards the end of 2012, the United Nations warned that world grain reserves were so dangerously low that severe weather in the U.S. or other food exporting countries could trigger a major hunger crisis in 2013. But now, the UN's Food Agency reports that global food prices remained stable in February from the previous month and that wheat harvests are set to increase by 4.3% this year. To help us assess where we stand now with regards to the global food crisis and the outlook for global food prices, we're joined by Brian Todd, the president of the Food Institute. Brian, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Brian, in 2012, we had failing harvests in the U.S., Ukraine, and other countries. The UN warned that grain reserves were at their lowest levels in about 40 years due to heat waves and other such concerns, and that the U.S. was at a historically precariously low level. That seems to have changed. Are we out of the woods?
Well, not entirely, but as with most forecasts, it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen in the future. And right now, we're waiting for the see what happens with the U.S. crops this year. Demand had been down a bit because prices did go higher, thus demand did go down, and things like ethanol usage and corn going to ethanol was also reduced. Indeed, several U.S. plants were closed during the year as a result of that. So that's where the forecasts are coming from right now.
Okay, well, let's see what the Food and Agriculture Organization has to say. The FAO Food Price Index dropped 2.5% year over year from February of last year. Also had a slight decrease from the previous month. Are we seeing some stabilization?
Well, we're seeing some of that. Also, you have to remember that last year prices were up significantly from the year before, so there is kind of a rubber band effect where they've gone down a bit. We do still expect food prices to rise this year, even though they may be down at the beginning of the year.
How much of a rise?
Actually, in the U.S., we're looking at about 3 to 4% increase this year.
Is there any particular sector, grains, meat, oils, that you think will have a more significant increase than the other?
Sure, definitely. Much more on the protein side. On the meat and poultry side, we will likely see more, as well as on the dairy side.
Now, protein became a very precarious issue in the UK and Europe with the horse meat scandal being substituted for beef products. Has that had an impact on global meat prices?
Not as far as we've seen. In any case, a relatively small portion of it they were talking about, not as far as the supply was concerned.
Well, a lot of times people blame Wall Street for everything. Wall Street speculators pushed up oil prices to over $150 a barrel. How much of a role do Wall Street speculators with regards to food commodities play in driving up food prices?
Difficult to say exactly, but food is such a huge segment of the economy of our country and the U.S. and the globe overall that I really don't think it has a significant impact or has had recently.
So people, cashing in on bad weather and buying grain futures aren't necessarily pumping up the prices more than demands for the actual end of the supply line.
Yeah, not necessarily, and nobody has as much power as Mother Nature in making things change.
So Mother Nature, weather, that is the most critical factor in determining global food prices?
Definitely.
What else?
Other things, transportation costs, oil costs, as well as the surging economies in different nations such as China, where many more becoming more mainstream food consumers, so using more food.
So do we have a situation where we have more consumption than production?
In some areas we may have that. Food is rather unique because different products can be substituted from time to time, be it poultry for beef or pork for beef. So there are many alternatives there, but I don't really think right now we have an overconsumption versus production problem.
Now, some have argued that subsidies by Western governments have pushed food prices to low levels that haven't substantiated an increase in production, and that's to blame for production fall in global food supplies. What do you say to that?
Well, subsidies, I think many countries subsidize their food production in many different ways, so it definitely does have an impact. I think the overall economy does even itself out over time, and being that it is a global food supply, it's very difficult to pin it on one specific country or one specific subsidy.
Okay, well, certainly food for thought. Thanks so much, Brian Todd, president of the Food Institute.